Chris Landry. I hope you're having an awesome day. Welcome into the game here in Tuscaloosa.
Hey, good to be with you. How you doing, Ryan?
Very good, man. We got a list of questions from the callers that we're going to get into, but let's go back about 7 or 8 days ago when we learned that Scott Cochran is departing. Kind of your reaction. What'd you think?
Well, I'm not saying that it was off of my radar a little bit. I've been, in terms of a little bit surprising because it was off my radar and focusing on other things. But I've been knowing for a while that Scott was looking for opportunities to get on the field. And, the last time it was really on my mind was, I'm going to say December or January, right around the time when Lane Kiffin got the job at Ole Miss, because that's when there was some discussions and real interest in him pursuing it. And I think Scott for about a year has been wanting to do that. And I knew that I didn't know for certain what Nick's stance was going to be on it, but in general, if you're going to hire the best special teams coach, somebody that's never done it would not be one of those people. And so, I think that was kind of the way it was looked at from Saban's standpoint, that if somebody's going to coach a position, he's got to be the best that I can get at a spot. So from a Georgia standpoint, I don't think that they're certainly not getting a proven special teams coach. I think that Scott may very well develop into a very good coach. I just, at this type of level, there's a certain element of risk. However, Kirby knows Scott. I think what Kirby's looking at, while it is a special teams coordinator position, I think he's trying to tap in to maybe some of the energy that Scott brings to the program, that maybe it might have some impact. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I would be more impressed if he lured Scott away as the strength coach, because I know what Scott Cochran does as a strength coach and the type of impact that he has to the program, but that's not what he's going to do. So when I look at it as not a good thing for Alabama from the standpoint of losing a very good strength coach, but I don't know how positive it is for Georgia yet, because you can't have the type of impact in the off-season program, which is really where that motivation starts. You can't have that if you're not the strength coach, and he's not going to be the strength coach. So I'm curious to see exactly how his role is going to be. And what I mean by that, you can have titles, but is he going to be someone, they've got some other people that may be able to help him game plan special teams wise, draw up formations, help things and that you can do as an analyst. And then obviously maybe Scott kind of grows into it and obviously going to be the on the field guy. But in essence, that's the carrot they dangled to get him over, because obviously he feels like he can have an impact on the Georgia program in a way that, if you look at Georgia, everything about Georgia looks like they're championship level, except during the season they've had more hiccups than a championship caliber team can overcome, and they look to be lacking that edge maybe to finish. And I think that's what Kirby's trying to do and trying to maybe capture with Scott. And it'll be curious to see if it works or not.
We're talking to Chris Landry, LandryFootball.com. Chris, what do you see in Nick Saban maybe going a little more scientific here? It seems like he's making some adjustments and bringing in maybe a little different philosophy.
Well, listen, this is not a move of, it was not something he was going to do with Scott leaving. I think he is looking, and always is. I mean, I think Scott was very good. And all of these guys I don't know any of the strength coaches that are not involved in the science anymore. I mean, now some maybe are a little bit more in tune than others. David has really been very good through his time at Indiana. Those guys are really strong. They don't get the caliber of players, but they've been really good, and certainly his time at Notre Dame. He spent a lot at some good places. I think what he was able to convince is a lot of what he can do in the advancement of science and technology that I think is really important. I was addressing it on one of my podcasts the other day. Somebody was asking me about the whole dynamics of free weights and machines and whatnot. And the big thing today is the science of the body. How does the body respond? As players are getting bigger and stronger, it is tougher on the ligaments and the tendons because you can't strengthen those. You can't do that, but you can strengthen the muscles around it. So what is I call it new age. It's not new. It's been around for several years now, but the big thing is pliability, flexibility, the ability to bend and to be in better position to absorb stress that normally goes on the tendons and ligaments to the muscles, because you can strengthen that and you can deal with whether it's a lineman going down in a pile and you get bent backwards, or if it's a back or a receiver, a defensive back or linebacker making a cut. There's a lot of science into that on how to improve that and to improve that part. Because here's what you're trying to get out of your strength and conditioning coach. You're trying to get them stronger, but you're trying to get them faster. You're trying to get them more flexible. You're trying to get him rehab better when he gets injuries, and you're trying to do everything you can from a nutrition, from a pliability standpoint, to prevent injuries as much as possible. You're not going to eliminate injury. Injuries for a player is 100% ratio, which means every player at some point, if they play long enough, going to get injured. It's just going to happen. It's just, can you reduce it? Can you minimize it? Can you make it easier to come out of the injury once you have it? That's really what the main job is. And, of course, you hear a lot of the when you do all these things, the teams that can do it and be the best condition, those are the ones that are the strongest in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's the whole fourth quarter, whole lumpy fingers. Everybody does that. Now, they do it a little bit better and had more success at Alabama because they got better players. They got better athletes. But they also have emphasized it, too. That emphasis is still going to be there. And how they do it, it's going to be interesting. I think the one thing that maybe Scott does a little differently is just his personalities. A lot of strength coaches are very loud, boisterous, because I'm going to tell you something. That's the tough job, because nobody wants to wake up at 4:30 and work out, okay, because you're not catching a pass, you're not celebrating a touchdown, you're not doing it in a stadium of 100,000 people, particularly when you got to rehab for an injury. Man, that is tough. You're not with the team. You have to be self-motivated. So that's the real genius of that position. You can teach and train, but you got to motivate them to do it and do the extra things that when you're not watching and they're not under your thumb, that they're doing the right thing from a hydration standpoint and a nutrition standpoint, which you can control to some degree, but not always, not all the time. So those things are important. And Scott was really good at bringing the energy, bringing the pace and the tempo of the off-season program. And, that's probably going to be the toughest thing. Certainly the science and the ability to do the job, that stuff will not be as big of an issue as people might think. But can you have the type of impact to motivate the same way and have the years of relationship, obviously, that's been there, but players come and go, how quickly and how much of a factor is that going to be? Is it going to be a drop-off, or is it going to be close to what it was? That's the part that I really can't answer and won't be able to answer, well, for some time until we see enough sample size of a few years.
Chris, we've also been asked today to kind of dive into this. I don't even know if it's a myth, but that's why we ask you the questions. When you look at Alabama players, are they more injured when they get to the NFL? Because we hear that often, but we don't know if it's true or not.
No, they're not more injured than anybody else. They have a lot of players that are more prominently talked about, and they have more draft picks. But if you go down the line of, a lot of programs, I mean, I think injuries happen more at maybe a little bit lower level, maybe where the strength and conditioning programs are not as good. But you don't hear as much about them because if they're not prospects, people don't talk about them. But the injuries are taking place. I think what it is that a lot of the players, I mean, if you look at the injuries that people talk about the most, they seem to be the ones where there's a lot of players. So, if you've got, 15 players that are potential draft picks at an LSU or an Alabama, I mean, you got all sorts of injuries because you talk about those 15 guys more than you would when you've got somebody that has 5 players. So you're going to have more injuries in a group of 15 than you're going to have in a group of 5, just common sense. So I don't see it. It doesn't happen. In fact, that was the old theory. Well, you don't want to take a running back from Alabama because they're all worn out. Well, that's not true. Derrick Henry and Mark Ingram and Kenyon Drake. It's not true, but it's something that's said. I mean, do you look at some of the Clemson injuries? Is there a pattern to it? Not really. Now, every year, as an organization, as a school, you always look at injuries, and if you're having a pattern of injuries, you always look at how you're conditioning, how you're coaching. But usually, if you have a lot of ACL tears, there's usually not a lot of symmetry with that. It's usually more bad luck, or maybe depending on when they happen or how they happen, it could be how you're practicing. But usually, it's more like hamstring and pulls and things of that nature. That's usually a result of your conditioning or your hydration. But I mean, where there are injuries, there's a whole bunch of injuries that I can quote of a lot of players, but I don't see the debilitating injuries like that is being kind of talked about there. I mean, they had their injuries, but no more than anybody else. If you look at it, they just got more players that are draft picks. It's not like I know I don't follow it much, but I know when Skip Bertman was the baseball coach at LSU, there was a history of he was criticized because a lot of his guys had rotator cuffs because maybe he pitched to more innings. There's a legitimacy to that, but I don't see that trend with any particular team or program, including Alabama's right now in football. I do not, no.
Well, you look at some of the Alabama guys at the NFL draft. Let's go to Henry Ruggs. Looks like that stock may be going up. Is that something that we're just kind of reading into maybe the 4.27 40-yard dash, or is Henry stock really going up significantly?
No, Henry's what I thought he was, and what I think most of us think. I think people are talking about stock up and down. People haven't set their draft boards in the league yet. So Henry is a speed player that's great with the ball in his hands. He doesn't drop the football. The fact that he ran, I don't care that he ran, 4.25 or 4.35. He's fast and he's quick and he's got unbelievable ability. He's like a pinball off of tacklers. He's phenomenal on jet sweeps. He's tremendous tracking the ball and running routes and getting open with his speed and quickness. But to me, there's nothing that he did in the workout that showed that. You can see that on tape. What the workout did is cemented what he is. He's not just a speedster. He's a complete guy that, whether he's the next Santana Moss or somebody in that mode, he's a great talent. There's no question about it. But I don't know that I would say that he needed that workout to cement himself. I think he's a guy that's going to go very high. I think he's a first-round talent. But there are a lot of receivers and there are a lot of other positions that people may go to. I mean, if you're a player of his ilk and you're playing on the defensive line, you're going to go higher. That's a bigger priority. And with the depth at receiver, it may affect his draft stock at some point. But in terms of an elite player, I think he was that going in and is now.
Terrell Lewis is another guy that it's kind of hard for me to get a read on him. Terrell Lewis, what do you see him in the NFL and kind of the upcoming draft? And like you said, taking into consideration that nobody set their draft boards, but where is his stock?
I think he's a great edge rusher, and I think when you're looking at the edge rushers in college football, there's not enough of them. There's some good ones, but they're guys that really know how to get the corner and come off the speed with edge, and I think that's Terrell. I think he's the production has been really good. I think he's got enough length and enough growth room to become a 265-pound guy at the next level. But he's, to me, a really good edge rusher that it developed nicely his spin move, and as he, I think is only going to get better. I think he's got good value if he's into the second round. I think that would be great. So we'll see if he falls that low or if somebody takes him in the late first round.
Chris, are you buying this Bill Belichick, Tom Brady breakup?
I don't know that I'm buying it. I think that there's a lot of smoke because there's certainly an interest by the Brady camp to kind of put outward pressure with the fans to maybe have some impact with Jonathan and Robert Kraft. I think Bill Belichick wants to have him back, has a plan to have him back, but even though he's the greatest quarterback of all time, he doesn't get to make all the decisions, and I think he has a contract in mind and an idea in mind, and I don't know if Tom Brady has maybe the desire to maybe get more money or maybe prove that he can do it without Bill. I don't know how strong the interest is by all the other teams that are supposedly interested. Maybe San Francisco is interested. Maybe they would dump Garoppolo. I kind of doubt it, but they might. Would the Titans move away from Tannehill for Brady? And again, we're not getting Brady's career. You're getting maybe the next 1 or 2 years. So he's not retiring. He's going to play football next year. It's either going to be with the Patriots or someone else, and I really don't know. I felt all along he's going to be back with New England, but it wouldn't surprise me if he wanted to go somewhere else because he might want to prove that. And the ego with him and Bill might be something that might lead to a parting of the ways.
When you look at Tua Tagovailoa, it seems like that the medical is maybe progressing, and I'll never forget reaching out to you and saying, hey, what do you think? You think Tua's going to stay or are you going to come back? He's gone. There's no way he can come back. And I was hearing all this stuff from local, but you were like, man, there's no way. There's no way. He's going to be a top pick. Don't buy into all this hype that he's a 15 to 20 and all this sort of stuff. And now we're kind of learning that you were very accurate on that. Where do you see Tua's ceiling? I mean, could he be part of the conversation at that one of those top spots?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the ceiling is higher than any quarterback in this draft. I think that the only issue that I would have, because the hip is, I can't give a time frame, but the hip's going to be fine. I mean, at some point it's going to be healed and the blood flow's good and all that kind of stuff. We'll have his workout. He'll have his day at Alabama. He won't be doing it at the Alabama Pro Day, but he'll have his day and he'll do nice things. And I don't know when he's going to be ready to play. But I think he is a dynamic passer. I think he's dynamic getting the ball out on time, on rhythm, and accurately. I think the ceiling is through the roof. I mean, I think he could have a phenomenal career. The only thing that would concern me, and I think it's a legitimate question, is his body made to withstand an NFL career? Now, they protect quarterbacks. You can't hit those guys. I certainly wouldn't advise him, running a whole lot, but, there's going to be some of that. He's not going to make a living doing that. But, with all that said, he's had the ankles, the tightrope procedures and all. You wonder with his body's just a little different. You have to ask yourself, and really it's more of, you've got to look at the body frame and get some good, strong medical advice. Is he a guy that's going to always be dealing with injuries? That's a legitimate question. And if you're not as concerned with that, then his upside's probably better than anybody. And I think Burrow is a little bit bigger, doesn't have the injury history. But if I'm Cincinnati, I'm doing my work on both. I'm probably taking Burrow, but I think that Tua is – there's going to be a panic as the draft gets here to get up and get him. I don't know that, although there's smoke, that the Redskins are going to want to move out the second pick, but that's why they're saying, I think, in blowing up a lot of smoke, because I think they want their phone to ring. I think the Redskins and the Lions and the Giants are definitely interested in trying to convince somebody like Miami that they got to come up to 2 or 3 or 4 to get Tua, because if you don't, somebody else might. Because I think if you're Miami or somebody, and I think you're really concerned that you might lose him. And I think that in Tua, you've got a guy that can be a transformative type player in the league if he can stay healthy. So I think he's going to go high, and I think behind him, Justin Herbert's going to go high, and I think before it's all said and done, probably within the top 18, 20 picks of this draft, Jordan Love is going to be the next, what I call second-round grade quarterback that's going to go in the first round. So, yeah, Tua's he won't take him long for his name to be called, and it's just a matter of who, where, and exactly when on the slot.
Do you see Cincinnati taking consideration at that number 1 spot? I mean, will they listen to other teams?
Yeah, yeah. They'll look at. I mean, it's not. I think they'll take Burrow. I think they, for the reasons that I mentioned, I think they feel there's. I think Tua's got a higher ceiling. I think Burrow has a lower floor. I mean, a higher floor. Meaning, there's no scenario in which Burrow won't be good. I mean, production-wise, if you're at Cincinnati and you don't build a team around him, then he won't be as good as he would be with a better team. But Burrow is, maybe doesn't have the questions in terms of the size and the build and the injury risk issue that Tua has. But I think Tua has even a better ceiling. So I think that it'll be under consideration. And I think that, I think the Redskins are going to go forward and take Chase Young at 2. I do think the Lions are going to have a great player to take at defense at 3, but I think they feel like that they could move down to 5 or 6 or 7, still get an elite player like a Derek Brown, a Javon Kinlaw, a Jeffrey Okudah, Isaiah Simmons. They can get one of those guys and get some extra picks by getting somebody to move up at quarterback, which is why I think even though they're committed to Matthew Stafford and he's still young enough to be a very good player for years to come, I think they're floating that out there that, we like quarterbacks as well, and I think they're wanting people to call them, and by people I mean people that are definitely are interested in them, maybe like Miami, like the Chargers, like the Panthers, teams like the Jags. I think all those teams would like to be in a position, but know that in most cases they're going to have to move up to get them, and move up probably in the top 4 or 5 picks.
LandryFootball.com. If you're looking for the college football notebooks, he does those daily on LandryFootball.com. You're looking for the Landry Football Podcast that he focuses and switches around and goes to different conferences. He covers the NFL. He covers the NFL draft. He covers the college side of things. I mean, we're 9 days away from spring football in Tuscaloosa. 185 days away from the real thing against USC out of Arlington, Texas. But spring football is going to be here before you know it. He's also breaking down the different position grades, looking at 2020 NFL Draft up in Las Vegas. Chris, tell us more about LandryFootball.com.
Well, we operate it like a personnel department in the NFL or in college, where you're getting a lot of inside information about what's going on around the college game, around the pro game, and the respective notebooks that you're referring to. But we also, like we did around recruiting, we break down all the classes, break down all the players. Once we get the draft behind us, we'll spend a lot of time, May, June, really breaking down in more detail the recruiting class of 2021. We've got the notebooks every day when guys are visiting or committing. we've got that information, but we're going to provide scouting reports and recruiting boards on those guys. But we certainly are providing all the information leading to the draft. The draft boards and free agent boards are right around the corner, working on that now, and finishing up the free agent boards and the free agent scouting reports, which basically are grading every play in the NFL by position so that people can understand, because we don't know 100% who's going to be a free agent. We know whose contracts are going to be up at the start of the league year on March 18th, but Andy Dalton, for example, probably not going to be in Cincinnati. How did he grade last year? Is that somebody your team should look at? You can find that out. So as players get released or signed, you know how they graded off this past year, and you also get a different post of maybe the top free agents, at least at this point, which some are going to be, franchise, like your Cowboys, and everybody's talking about Dak Prescott. Well, Dak Prescott's not leaving the Cowboys. I mean, he's going to be with the Cowboys. Whether they get a long-term deal or have to tag him, whatever, he's not somebody's not going to be able to sign him. And same thing with Drew Brees with the Saints or what have you. So we've got all that covered for you, and really excited about getting, as we got the combine out of the way last week and got a lot of personal information. A lot of these players are going to be providing the scouting reports, draft room style, and draft boards that are going to give you a lot of insight into how it's really done in the league. So it's shoot for less than a magazine subscription. You can have access to your own scouting department. So take advantage of our scouting season offer, which is the best one we've ever had. And we're going to be contributing a little bit with our neighbors in Tennessee that's been hit so hard, as folks in Tuscaloosa are very well aware of the tragedies that can, be got by awful tornadoes and that situation. Having lived in Nashville when I work with the Titans, it's certainly tough to see it happen anywhere. So we'll be taking 50% of our proceeds for the foreseeable future and donating it to the Cajun Navy here, which I'm involved with, where we buy supplies and stuff for folks. So it's another way. You don't have to do that, folks. If you've got a way to get some help, do that. But just be aware that we're going to be contributing to those folks, including with any 50% of the money that you provide for a subscription is going to go to that cause. So we think you'll love it. You like football, you're going to love LandryFootball.com. So check it out.
Chris, have an awesome week. Thank you for being a part of the show.
Thank you very much.